The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
Obviously, we over budgeted last year. I hate to say that I was right, but I was right. So.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
I take our constitutional rights, the constitutional rights of my constituents, very seriously.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
Mr. Speaker, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you boil this down, there is never any time that a parent's right to govern what their children see and what they're exposed to should ever be bypassed.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's 10:30 up north, 11:30 in the south. It is January 8th, 2026. Idaho Signal's on the air. My name is Matt Edwards. Thank you for tuning in live, and if you're watching this on a later broadcast, we're glad to have you here as well. I just want to take a quick moment here to note that the fires that are going on in Southern California right now are truly devastating, unprecedented. I've never seen anything like that, and I know that the audience up here and in Idaho, there are a lot of roots down in California, and maybe particularly down in Southern California as well. So to all those who are affected by this fire, we are in our prayers, and we hope things can subside quickly. Okay, we have a really good show today. We've got a couple of great guests, and we want to waste no time in doing so. So let's get to it. First, tomorrow at the Capitol, and I believe broadcast online, which is going to be amazing for all the folks that are not in Boise. The Idaho Family Policy Center is hosting a citizen lobbyist training event type thing. And so we have the president of Idaho Family Policy Center, Blaine Canzati, with us. Blaine, good morning. Happy New Year to you. Thanks for joining me. We for the first of what I hope will be many appearances, because you guys are doing great work over there. Can you walk us through a little bit what tomorrow brings?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Matt. I appreciate it. Good morning. Idaho Family Policy Center is a nonprofit Christian ministry that seeks to advance the lordship of Jesus Christ in the public square. And one of the ways that we do that is through promoting God-honoring public policy and engaging the church on cultural issues. And so we are the voice for the Christian church down at the Capitol building. And we help everyday Christians get engaged. We send out regular action alerts, but we also help Christians formulate testimony for public committee hearings. You know this, Matt. I know this. We've all seen it in committee hearings. Sometimes a bill lives or dies based on the public testimony. And here's the thing. The left shows up to testify for the bills that they support. They show up to testify against the bills that they don't support. And our side doesn't do that. Conservative Christians generally don't show up for bills. If we do, we show up at very small numbers. Sorry, my cat just jumped on our counter.
All right.
So, our legislative, I think we're calling it Citizen Lobbying 101, is a program that's designed to help everyday Christians learn how to testify. What are the rules? How do you interact with the chairman? How do you answer questions? How do you formulate your testimony? All these are important things that people need to know before they come down to the Capitol building and testify or do so online.
Yeah, and that's a great part. I do notice there at the top, if you guys can scroll back up, this is a webinar, so people will be able to attend live and then also watch it online. And that's great because what you're saying essentially is that you don't have to give your testimony or your comments in person. You can do so live. So do you have a kind of like a couple of bullet points here that maybe for those that are already engaged in it and have been wanting to do it but don't know how to do it, what are some things that they can expect to hear from this webinar?
Yeah. So, we go over how do you construct a testimony effectively. A lot of people think that if they go down and they testify for a bill, they need to be the expert, right? Let's say it's a bill on medical freedom. They need to be the expert on medical freedom. They need to cite all these scientific studies or medical literature. Or let's say it's a bill on education. They need to be citing educational literature, right, from the various education journals. But guess what? That's simply not the case. There are, experts who come down to testify for bills, and legislators give them deference if it's an area of specialization that they have. But for the average everyday voter, for the average everyday constituent, you have a story to share, and your story is going to be so much more powerful in influencing how the committee members vote than citing a bunch of statistics or citing a bunch of academic journal articles. If you're going down to testify for school choice and you talk about how your child has been trapped in a failing public school, or if you talk about a bad experience with administrators who weren't willing to listen to you because they weren't accountable to you in the same way that a private school might be, those types of stories are going to be more effective than if you go down and you cite a bunch of statistics from the Education Journal. So share your story, and that's one thing that we go through. And how do you construct your testimony? Hey, I'm Blaine Kanzati. I'm from District 12, and I'm here to support bill number 512. And here are the reasons why. Here's the story I'm going to share with you. And talking through the chairman, following Robert's Rules of Order, a lot of things that people haven't considered. It's really not that intimidating when you do it. It sounds intimidating. It looks intimidating. There's a few basic rules, and we'll go through that with you in the Citizen Lobbying 101 course.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. Two things to comment on there is telling the story is like, I can't echo that enough. That is so important. It's what we try and do at our organization is really like give a voice to the citizens and tell their stories, because quote experts can come in all the time, all they want, and cite so many different facts and reasons for why things should be how they are or why they need to be changed. But all it takes is one compelling story from a citizen who's truly affected by something to really sway a legislator in the way you don't want to. So yeah, that is such a great point, and I'm so glad that you guys are focused on that. The other thing too, though, is like you said, the process. It's something that's not to be intimidated by, and I think one of the great things that folks can do is just watch committee hearings and just see how they operate. Because once you do it once, it's like riding a bike or something. Like once you do it once, you just kind of get the flow of it and hang of it. So this is really great. Are you when you yeah. Oh, yeah. We see it. We see this as a free event. So you're doing this out of your own pockets, putting this on. So how do people support your organization so that you can bring on these events for free?
Yeah, we do a bunch of free events. We view the work that we're doing as a ministry that's offered to Christian conservatives all across the state so that we can advance the lordship of Christ here in Idaho and build back a Christian state that respects family and freedom and all the things that we care about collectively. So you can support us at idahofamily.org, and we certainly appreciate that support. We're entirely funded by your average everyday Idahoan and churches all across the state. So we would appreciate that. This webinar is free. Certainly encourage you to attend, to register. We actually, through this webinar series, we do this every year. We have a list of citizen lobbyists who we can call on to come and testify for the bills that we're working on at the State House. We'll help you prepare the testimony prior to the committee hearing. We make it really easy. We tell you where to show up, how to do it. So we try to make the process as simple as possible.
Yeah. And this term lobbyist has been thrown around a lot recently in Idaho politics. And can you kind of describe a little bit the difference between like what you're calling here a citizen lobbyist and your typical, industry lobbyist or private sector lobbyist?
Yeah. And there really is a big distinction there. So, most lobbyists who work either at our state capitol or on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., are paid for by industries. They're contract lobbyists, they're mercenaries for hire, and they are contracted to work on a specific bill. They may or may not even support what the bill would accomplish if it is passed and enacted into law. That's entirely different than what we're doing at Idaho Family Policy Center. We have an entire policy team of about 5 individuals right now, and all of them are down at the Capitol building lobbying in the sense that they're, asking legislators to support our priorities and support our bills. They're overcoming objections and using principled persuasion to winsomely whip votes for the things that we care about. That's what we're doing at Idaho Family Policy Center, and that's what we would hope Christian conservatives would be doing down at the Capitol building as well, right? Contacting your legislator, showing up to these committee hearings. That is citizen lobbying in the sense that you're asking your legislator to support or oppose particular legislation, but it's entirely different than the contract mercenary, lobbyist for hire system that we see all too often down in Boise or in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it's the balance that's needed. Can you imagine, lobbying for a bill that you privately may not want to support, but you have to do so because it's your job, and you're good at it. Yet here, you get the opportunity to show up on bills that are passionate about, and that's what we do. The same thing here. We try to rally people to do this as well. So I'm glad you guys are taking the initiative in teaching people this. Before we let you go here, what are some other things that we can look forward to from Idaho Family Policy? What are you guys working on this year?
Yeah, we've got the most aggressive pro-family, pro-freedom, pro-faith agenda yet that we've ever planned on introducing. We're really excited for this session. Everything from bringing the Bible back to public schools, school-sponsored Bible reading where teachers read the Bible without instruction or comment or interpretation, and the students will have the Bible read to them over the course of their public education career. That's super important. For over 100 years, Idaho public school children heard the Bible read every day in their school classroom, and that practice ended in 1964. It's time to bring it back. We're bringing back our drag show legislation that prohibits drag shows and other indecent sexual exhibitions in places where children would be present. No child should be subjected to the sexualization of these exhibitions, these drag shows that are taking place all too often in the state of Idaho and nationally. We also have legislation to protect preborn life that's coming down the pipe and to encourage Christian values in business and in government and in culture. And so we're really excited about this session, and in the next few weeks, some of that will start rolling out.
All right, fantastic. Well, Blaine, thank you so much. This is great work. We're going to have you back to check in on all that stuff. That is really, really great. Where can people follow you?
IdahoFamily.org, IdahoFamily.org.
All right, very good. All right, Blaine, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, take care. All right, everybody. That is fantastic. I got to tell you, man, you guys need to tune in, head over to their website and tune in for that webinar. And if you're in Boise, go on down there, meet Blaine, meet the team down there, and do it. Do it live. We're going to do it live. We're going to take a break right now. We'll be right back.
And that's exactly what happened. You want to pull the tape? You can pull the tape because we now got video.
Idaho is the dirt under your fingernails after an honest day's work. Idaho is the hug around your neck when your daughter spells her first word. Idaho is the written word of the law, steadfast and impartial, guarding liberty for all. Idaho is the family rifle passed down, a legacy of protection and the right to stand firm. Idaho is the echo of your own voice, unshaken and free, standing tall among a world silenced. Idaho is the home that's built to weather storms, not empty wallets. Idaho is the quiet trust between a patient and healer, unbroken and sacred. Idaho is the hymn carried by the Spirit, gathering neighbors together in faith and purpose. Idaho is the laughter around a campfire, a family's bond growing stronger with every word. Idaho is the pioneer's will, firm and clear. We govern ourselves, free and unbound. Idaho is what America was. Let's keep it that way. Ask your legislator to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge to preserve our shared values. We ride together.
Okay, we are back. Fantastic. It is January 8th. And we want to keep you up to speed what's going on at the Capitol, of course. That's generally what we follow here. And I think it's fair to say that traditionally speaking, when the legislature convenes in January, that it's a kind of a slow start and then it just hits the gas as the bills start flying. So yesterday we covered a couple of bills that were presented in the House State Affairs Committee. This morning, there was another bill that was presented that we kind of want to share with you, especially because we've just gone through a ballot initiative battle in this state when it came to Prop 1, which was the ranked choice voting and the liars called it open primaries, but we know that they were jungle primaries. But that's what they were. That's what they were doing. Anyway, so Bruce Skog this morning, Representative Bruce Skog, was in the House State Affairs Committee, and he presented a piece of draft legislation. Again, how this goes is like right now the bills that we're seeing come in are just they're being requested to be printed so they can go to a full hearing. So today wasn't a full hearing; it was just a quick in and out process to try and get this bill printed. And so he presented a bill today that we haven't read the entire thing yet because it has yet to be printed and posted. But it looks like the bulk of the bill deals with the idea of raising the threshold for a ballot initiative to pass in Idaho. Currently, you need 50%, plus one of the vote to have your initiative pass and become law. And Bruce Skog is arguing that it should be at 60%. So we have a little bit of his presentation to share with you right now. And again, once we come back for a full hearing, there'll be a lot of more testimony and a lot more opinion on this matter. But let's watch Bruce Skog.
Process vote count threshold from 50% to 60% if approved. In reality, right now, there is no longer such a thing as a citizens initiative process in Idaho. And I was a little shocked when I thought about that, but that's really the case because it's all out-of-state money, or most of it's out-of-state money, millions of dollars coming into our state to affect and change what we as a legislature would have done as representatives of the people. The initiative process is broken. This is one way to level the playing field a little bit by raising it to 60%. There are other states that have 60% or 2/3 in some of their initiative processes. So I would ask that you would print this today and that we would be able to flesh this out further in a bill hearing. Thank you.
Very good. All right. So they very good. They went on to print the bill. He did get a question asked from Representative Todd Achilles, and this was interesting because Todd Achilles is also the head of a veterans group in Idaho that was one of the main backers of Prop 1 of that initiative. And his name was all over that proposition. There was a great report out of East Idaho from a news station out there. Forgive me if I don't remember his name at the moment. And they did this 30 or 40-minute documentary on the origins of Prop 1 and the ballot initiative and what happens in Idaho. And Mr. Achilles himself was shown to be one of the top two guys, at least behind this initiative of Prop 1. And so he had a few questions here for Bruce Skog, and it's kind of interesting. Let's watch that.
Representative Achilles.
Yes, Madam Chairman, to comment on the motion. Go ahead.
We've got a couple questions on this RS that when it comes back for a full hearing, we'd like the sponsor to address. First is we are pushing forward, and it changed the initiative process when the Idaho Supreme Court has ruled unambiguously that the initiative process is a fundamental right for Idaho voters. So I think we need to address that, number one. Number two, we're putting a 60% threshold on citizens, on Idaho citizens, when we as legislators only have a 50% threshold. So I think we have to justify that more clearly. And third is I was asked the sponsors to address the implications of this change to the initiative process, because had we had a 60% threshold on past initiatives, we would not have passed sales tax relief, property tax relief, the homeowner's exemption, and a couple of others. So I think it's important that we look at the totality of this.
Yeah, very interesting there. Not wanting it to go up to 60%. It's interesting that in the House of Representatives, there are certain resolutions and rules and memorials that do require a 60% threshold. And if the governor vetoes something, then you also need a supermajority like that. So it's not entirely unprecedented. We've got a comment here. This would be huge in stopping frivolous initiatives. Even Kami, Colorado has a 55% threshold level. Well, there you go. So even 55% is not necessarily as egregious, and maybe in Achilles' mind is 60, although I think he probably doesn't want anything but 50. But great comment there. Great comment. I think that, what else? Or we would not have passed Medicare expansion. That's true. Very true. So, because that would not have, that was just a barely, there's a whole, the ballot initiative is definitely broken in this state. And Bruce Skogg's comment on the outside money being, funding these initiatives is a big sticking point here, because it's not, when he says it's not truly a citizen-led initiative, it's sort of astroturfed. It's not really coming up from the grassroots. It's not you or I sitting there going, God, how can we change something? Let's write a bill here. Let's try and rally folks here and really get it going and raise money on our own. And to have to go outside and bring in, I think it was close to $5 million to come in and run this initiative and do so. It's very it's not very genuine, and full disclosure, I run an organization that raises a lot of money, and we get a lot of money from national donors as well. So, but that's a whole different story, I think. And one of those we can get into that at a later date. But I'm certainly not ignorant to say that that there's many different factors go into running campaigns and such, and we can get into that in a later date. Okay, let's if Kate Hartley, I think Kate Hartley might be here. Do we have a thumbs up? Can you guys see that? Yeah. So there's a case going on down in the Treasure Valley that Kate Hartley, we've had Kate Hartley on numerous times over last session and during the break too. But she's an attorney with Pacific Justice Institute, and they take on these First Amendment religious freedom cases. And there's a case down in the Treasure Valley that Kate is working on right now that could have some implications on something that we talked about last session, which is this Blaine Amendment. And so it's my pleasure to welcome Kate to the program. Kate, good to see you. Happy New Year. Glad to have you back on the program.
Thanks, Matt, for having me. Happy New Year to you as well.
Yeah, great. Okay, so lay out the kind of details of this case, and then we'll get into some of the ramifications that it might have. But what are the details of this case that you're working on?
Yeah, right now we represent a church down in Canyon County who was previously renting the facilities of a charter school. So they were paying the charter school to use their facilities for their worship services and other needs. And they had their lease agreement terminated because the school was about to receive a state-backed building bond. And so the bond issuers said, if a church is renting from your school, renting the facilities of your school, you cannot receive this building bond from the state, because that is perceived as the state appropriating funds to a church. So they had their lease terminated. They had to find somewhere else to go very quickly. And so we are challenging that decision on a number of First Amendment grounds. So free exercise of religion, Establishment Clause, and free speech grounds. And Matt, as you mentioned, in their decision making to terminate the lease with this church, they utilized what's called the Blaine Amendment, which is part of our state constitution, so the Idaho State Constitution, that essentially says that state funding cannot be appropriated to religious entities, religious purpose. So we are obviously challenging the application of that to the church in this situation. But as you mentioned, this is also a major issue because the state legislature has attempted to repeal the Blaine Amendment entirely because of its discriminatory nature. And as evidenced by the situation in our lawsuit, this church was discriminated against by someone relying on the Blaine Amendment. And I think it's important to know that at a minimum, it causes confusion. It causes confusion for decision makers. Hey, this is part of our state constitution. Do we utilize it? Do we not? So at a minimum, I think we have that, if we're giving people the benefit of the doubt, we have confusion going on. And then certainly it can also be intentionally used to discriminate for folks who intentionally want to discriminate using it. So this is, again, as you know, heating up in the legislature as well. Last year there was an attempt to repeal this portion of our state constitution entirely. And it is also relevant in discussions on any type of school choice bill, because the assumption is that folks would utilize those state funds for religious schooling. So,
that's what I want to ask you about there, because the state already, I believe, gives money to like higher ed institutions that are religious in nature. I mean, I can't imagine that. Like, I think even this launch grant that we keep talking about, where high school graduate can take money to go train at a facility or at a school for a particular job. Like there are religious schools on those lists that are getting government money. Does St. Luke's Hospital have a chapel inside their hospital for people to pray? I mean, all of this seems so hypocritical. I mean, there's no standard here.
Yeah, and really, the key thing, for everyone to know as well is that the, Idaho state law, Idaho state constitution, it's very important, but nothing in it can, violate the U.S. Constitution. And applying this Blaine Amendment in the ways that we've seen it applied violates the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And, in every other way, anything not mentioned, the rule of federalism, anything not mentioned in the U.S. Constitution, a state can go ahead and legislate however it wants to. But this is one of those the situations where the U.S. Constitution does speak to this, and you cannot discriminate based on religion. And so it's, again, like you said, it's inconsistent. So therefore, is it just confusing some people when they're trying to make decisions? And I mean, there's certainly those out there, who oppose any effort for any state funding to go to particularly religious schools, but really any type of religious situation. And there are those who are always going to oppose that, but it is also just simply confusing.
Yeah. And just to be clear, the school that the church was using, was it a religious school in itself, or no, right?
No, it was a public charter school.
So it's a public charter. So I mean, wow. I mean, that is such an overreach. That is such an overreach to say, like, you can't do business with religious people and receive this bond for a public charter school. Wow.
We certainly think it's overreach. Absolutely.
Yeah. And who makes these calls? This is the kind of thing that it's like, we're suing these entities and we can just say we blame the government, but like, who's in charge? Do you have names? Because I'd love to know who these people are that made the call to. Somebody had to say deny for this reason.
Well, so within our lawsuit, the defendants are the school itself and the Idaho Housing and Finance Association, which has been delegated authority by our legislature to issue these bonds, these building bonds that are state backed. So they are the ones assigned to issue these bonds.
Idaho Housing and Finance
Association, correct?
Association.
They're
Okay.
named as a defendant, as is the school.
Right.
So they, between them, they made this decision. Again, not speaking to their intent, but that was the decision that was made, and the lease was terminated. And
well, you're a good lawyer. You're not gonna ascribe intent to anybody. You're just showing what happened, and we'll take it from here with the intent and the motivation and who's calling them. And we're gonna find out who these people are that made this stupid call. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, imagine saying to like another public building. I mean, I don't know. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre, and it's just and it just kind of shows that the people in power aren't. Like by saying no, by denying this public. I mean, is there any? I mean, is the church? Is this a dangerous church? I mean, what kind of church is this? I mean, I
certainly don't think so. This is a great church, and they had a great relationship actually with the charter school.
Yeah.
The church and the charter school got along very well. They both, I think, benefited from the arrangement that they had in their lease. And Matt, I would say I think this really, really highlights why it is so important and why I support in every way repealing this part of our state constitution, and why I think legislatively that's a very important thing that needs to be done, because it's sitting there, and lawyers are going to look at this part of the Constitution sitting there and saying, well, we haven't specifically had a court overrule our Blaine Amendment. And so, they don't know what to do. I mean, again, if we're giving people the benefit of the doubt, it just causes confusion, right? If nothing else. And it is so important to just have clarity on this. Yeah. And which is why I 100% support any legislative effort to clarify that by just having that removed entirely from our Constitution, and move forward without the religious discrimination that it tends to lead to.
Yeah. Yeah. And you put a good point on there, because so far there hasn't been anything within Idaho to seriously challenge this amendment. Like we've seen in, I think it was Montana. Montana has a similar, the Blaine Amendment. I mean, if you go back to the history of the Blaine Amendment, it went through several states as they were admitted to the Union. Right. But in Montana, that did get challenged, and the Supreme Court told Montana that they couldn't do that. They couldn't, basically said you can't have that amendment, or what you're doing is right. I mean, I guess you're better off explaining it than I am.
Exactly. Yeah. So and Montana has a very similar Blaine Amendment from ours, and the Supreme Court did not say the Blaine Amendment in and of itself was unconstitutional and they couldn't have it, but their application of it in discriminating against people who wanted to use state funding for religious schools was unconstitutional. So we haven't had the Supreme Court go as far to say as, just a state having this in their state constitution is unconstitutional at the federal level. But they have, in many actually different cases, they have said applying it in a way that discriminates against religious people violates the First Amendment. And that's, goes back, there are recent cases that have emphasized that, but that's not a new concept. That is long-standing Supreme Court precedent, and it keeps happening, unfortunately, despite that precedent being there. Yeah. And my case is a good example of that. So,
yeah,
it's still happening.
Well, obviously we wish you luck with that case. I don't know if you caught Blaine Canzati on earlier, but he talked about one of the things that he wanted to do was he's trying to help bring the Bible back into the classroom. Because it's something that's been in Idaho for 100 years up until 1964. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't necessarily to establish religion or to teach out of it, but just have it read. When it comes to those who would cry out, oh, that's violating this church and state thing and turning schools and indoctrinating kids in religiosity or the Bible or whatever. How do you look at that, and what's your take on trying to bring that back, and if it would violate any sort of establishment?
I'm very excited to see any bill that would do exactly that. And I think that we have to look at the history and tradition of this country and this state. And like you said, the Bible was read, and I'll go ahead and say Judeo-Christian values in general were part of our government since its inception. And that may be an unpopular thing to say, but it's a fact. It's a fact in our country and our state. And we can debate all day long about whether that's good or bad, but it's a fact. And so, and that's being said, other faiths in this country are allowed to freely worship however they want as well without government interference. But it doesn't change the fact that our history and our tradition are with Judeo-Christian values. And so that is why reading the Bible as a historical text is absolutely not violative of the Establishment Clause, and it is part of our history and tradition that should be within government schools and other areas of government potentially. I think it's time to stop weaponizing the Establishment Clause. And what I mean by that is using the Establishment Clause to say we cannot have religion in any way as part of the government. And that is absolutely not the way it is. That is a completely inaccurate use of the Establishment Clause. And it has been weaponized to remove religion from government for decades. And thankfully, we have some more recent Supreme Court cases that they don't go as far to say it that way, but they emphasize that this needs to be based on history and tradition. And so my hope is that we are hopefully heading down a road that ends the weaponization of the Establishment Clause in that way.
Yeah, very well said. Great. All right. Well, Kate Hartley, we're going to check in with you. We'll have you back throughout the session here. And how can people support your work or keep tabs on what y'all are doing?
Probably our website, pji.org, is where is my firm's website, and you can look at what we're doing and our cases, and get in contact with me through there if you need to.
Okay, great. All right, Kate. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you around.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate you having me.
All right, take care. Very good. Okay, let's take a quick break. We'll reset. I think Brian Allman is on the horn, and we'll be right back.
Coming from within the system, which the process in the system is broken.
All Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? Because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those two founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
That's right, folks. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We accept donations from every liberty-loving person out there. So you can head over to idahosignal.com, support the program there, and keep us powered. There are so many great supporters across the state that I've gotten to know a little bit, some more than others, and I'm always humbled when I get a notification in the email box that someone sent along $25 or $10, or sometimes we get $250 or $500, and it's like it's amazing. It just shows, it keeps us going, it keeps us motivated, not just to stay on the air, but it keeps me motivated too, because I know that we're fighting the good fight. And we have folks like Blaine and Kate on who are out there working hard to advance our principles, to secure liberty, and to protect our future generations. I mean, this is what it's all about. The whole citizen lobbying thing, the difference between a citizen lobbyist, which I'm a citizen lobbyist. I'm not lobbying for any specific firm or anything. I'm lobbying for you, for me, for my family, for your family. I mean, this is what we do, and I'm so blessed to be in this position and be able to have this outlet to be able to do this and work with all of you. So, in order for that to continue, though, I also need to know what you're thinking. So I love the comments coming in. You can email the program signal@citizensallianceidaho.org. You can also leave voicemails now. And eventually, if we get voicemails, we'll play them on the air. But I get it. Sometimes people are just, it takes a while to warm up to want to like put your voice on the air. But call this number, 208-402-4915, and leave us a message and we'll play it on the air. Like, amplify your voice, you guys. Amplify your voice. This is the way to do it. I had a great sound bite here. Where is it? I don't know where it is. Do you guys remember? Oh, I want if you're dialing the phone and you're just like waiting for that last number.
Today, Junior.
Like, get it done, man. Today. Anyway, all right. I'll get my Gen X fixed some other way. Okay, I believe Brian Allman is on the line. Brian, welcome to the program, buddy. How you doing?
Oh, doing well, Matt. Thanks for having me again. It's great to have this program as a way for people to keep up on what's going on without having to rely on the evening news or the Idaho Statesman.
Yeah. Oh boy, you're telling me, man. And same to you. I mean, the work that you've been doing with Gem State Chronicle and your coverage and your analysis and your opinion and just trying to keep things straight and narrow, even from a conservative perspective, is really beneficial. We were watching some of the stuff this week. Obviously, it's a slow week when you get going with, there's not really many committees. There's more meetings, there's more presentations for the next couple of weeks, but there are some bills starting to fly out there, and the conservatives are really hitting the ground heavy. You got Heather Scott's marriage, defining marriage resolution. You've got Ehart with the BSU women's volleyball recognition. And then this morning, Bruce Skog trying to take on the ballot initiative. What's your take so far? What are you seeing out there?
Well, like you said, it's a little bit quiet, but things are starting to come out. Obviously, there's going to be some big stuff later in the session. I just see that the website is refreshed, and we've got House Bill 1 and House Bill 2 are officially in the on the docket, which is very exciting, I think, if you're a political nerd like I am.
Are we starting? We're starting from 1?
Yeah, we're starting from 1. It is
all right. Very good. It's the first new class
legislature, so we start over at 1.
Right.
Senate will be 1001. Clint Hostetler, Representative Hostetler from the Magic Valley, gets the distinction of filing the very first actual bill, and it looks like it's a parental choice tax credit. Looks like he's preempting Representative Horman and Senator Den Hartog's bill. We'll see if this goes anywhere. But
yeah.
That's good. It looks like I'm just glancing at it as I'm on the air here. It looks like it's a refundable tax credit of up to $9,500 instead of the $5,000 that's going to come from the other bill. And a cap of $250 million instead of the $50 million cap. So that's audacious. I'd love to see this. I don't know if they'll get broad support, but maybe they'll have some negotiations and pull something in the middle. I think that would be a great result of that.
Yeah, that's kind of like the art of the deal kind of thing. Like you just say, we're going to take Greenland, although they might take Greenland. I mean, that's looking pretty promising. But you just sort of you just shoot for everything and then see where you can negotiate down to something. And like you said, Horman's bill, the $50 million, aligns with Governor Little and what he said he would promise to do. Although he did have a caveat in some of that. We were watching the JFAC meeting where, and we have Lori Wolf, I think. Lori Wolf was presenting the governor's plan in specifics to JFAC, and she had she had pointed out that the governor did have some stipulations and wanting to make sure that there was accountability and that sort of thing. And we talked about that the other day. But what do you think the chances are of I mean, I'm surprised that bill got printed.
Well, yeah, I'll have to go back and watch the video and see if there was any debate about the printing. But when it comes up, if it actually gets a hearing, which hopefully it does, we'll get the debate out in the open. That's one thing I think that is good for the process, is when the debate happens out in the open. Obviously, the governor's office and the legislature have been going back and forth on crafting a bill that everybody can get behind. But we want to actually see those discussions. We don't necessarily want them to happen in some dark room with no windows.
No, we don't. Absolutely not. And the other thing too, Brian, is that, as I would say, is like, sometimes bills get drawered that we never even hear about or see, and because they're just not really, there's different reasons. Maybe they're not, they don't strike at the core of what the people are paying attention to, whether it's a mask bill or a vaccine bill or school choice or taxes. Like, those are big ticket items. And when you see a committee completely ignore a big ticket, what I would call a big ticket item, a big fat bill that was passed in the House, and then just get ignored in the Senate, like, that's just, to me, it's just offensive. Like, it should at least get a hearing. Right. I want to play some video for you. Josh Tanner, who's on JFAC, had pushed back a little bit on the ratio of spending to tax cuts that the governor proposed. So let's watch this video from Representative.
Madam Co-Chair, Administrator Wolf, curious, going through your budget, it looks like there was about $400 million of new spending. And I see the $100 million in the tax cut, tax relief, promises kept to Idahoans. Why isn't that the reverse? Why aren't we looking at more of a $400 million tax relief and $100 million of new spending? Because that is more what we heard from the public when we were out especially for us, this last election cycle. We saw that was probably one of the larger complaints, was that government was growing at too much. We were spending too much. Why did your administration, why did the governor take a position on such a low tax cut versus spending and not kind of the reverse?
Ms. Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Tanner. I don't know that the governor would say $100 million in tax relief is a small number. I think, as we mentioned, we've hit the $4.6 billion in tax relief over the last 5 years, and he's very supportive of moving forward with that.
Well, that's not what he said. He didn't say that it was small. He said it was lower compared to the other, to the $400 million in spending. What's your take on that?
Well, it's interesting to see this, area of discussion, debate opening up between the governor's office and the legislature. You heard Speaker Mike Moyle at the House press conference on Monday say that he thinks $100 million is a good start, but he wants at least 3 times that. And now Representative Tanner, my representative from District 14 and a pledge signer in good standing, I believe, came out and said he wants $400 million in new spending and $100 million in tax relief. Why not flip those? And that's a perfectly reasonable question. The governor's got this $500 million that he's going to play with, and he'll give us 20% of it back, but the rest he's going to invest, he's going to spend. and that's where you get to a fundamental philosophical idea of the role of government. Is the government supposed to just handle the basics, protect life, liberty, and property, roads, jails, things like that? Or what did, I believe it was Governor Ducey on Monday said it's educate, incarcerate, and one other thing that rhymed. Anyway, the government has certain specific roles that are outlined in the Constitution. Public education is one of those. It doesn't say how much you have to spend. But then you have, people like the governor who believes that he can do good with our taxpayer money. And, tax revenues have been going up because population keeps moving into Idaho, and we have a good economy. So people are making more money and spending more. So sales tax is going up as well. All these revenues are going up. And so the governor looks at this money and says, well, what can I do with this? How can I help people with this? How can I
give it back? You give it back. You give it back. That's the problem with some of these Republicans. They're progressive Republicans. They're doing exactly what you're saying. They're like, whoa, look at this. Look at all the good I can do with this. And the best thing that you can do is say, here, private sector, take your money back and you do it better, because you do it way better than the government will.
And this debate has been going on for about 100 years. I've been doing a lot of personal reading about the 1940s and 50s and the political debates of those times, because you had the New Deal. You had Franklin Roosevelt came in and said, we're going to spend all this money to fix the economy and invest in American infrastructure. Republicans said, no, it's the people's money. But then you had this strain of Republican who grew out of that, who said, well, we're going to take some of that money and we're just going to spend it more efficiently than the Democrats can. And I think that's we see that today. Yeah.
I think we have the chart here of the amount of how the budget has increased, and now of course when COVID hit, we got hit with a ton of money. We'll talk about that in a second here, but I don't have I can't see that exactly, but it almost looks like it doubled or almost a third more or something along those lines.
In the last 10 years, it's more than doubled.
Yeah.
In the last 5 years, it's gone up, or the last 4 years, it's gone up by over 50%. A lot of that is federal COVID money, but the problem is that money starts getting in there and then the agencies get used to having it. They spend it for ongoing projects instead of one-time things. And then when the federal money runs out, they come running to JFAC and to the legislature saying, we need more money for this.
Yeah.
And as long as there's tax dollars available, they feel like, okay, well, we can allocate those, we can appropriate those.
And that's exactly what happened yesterday at the work when they talked about Senator Grow, the co-chair of JFAC, asked about I think a $15 million another $15 million to go in this workforce housing program that was started using COVID money. Let's watch this.
Second question is on the workforce housing fund. Could you give us a little detail? What exactly is that $15 million spent for there?
Ms. Wolf. Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Grow. So I believe it was in 22 when we developed the workforce housing fund in statute, and that money transfers into that fund, and then IHFA uses that to help build, I want to say, affordable housing, but it offsets some of the costs so that they can sell those homes or build those. A lot of it was multifamily homes. They also did do some single family homes, but trying to keep the costs down so that it's more affordable when people are either renting or purchasing that. And we're just mirroring this recommendation off exactly what we did with the workforce housing fund a couple of years ago that was supported back in 22. It was $50 million, and that was ARPA funding. So this is 15, not 50, and it's a one-time transfer.
only 15, not 50. And that's because it's not COVID money. It wasn't just printed out of thin air and given to the states. And ARPA money is COVID money, right, Brian?
Exactly. It was a bunch of money that they dumped into state and local governments. Here in my hometown of Eagle, they used some of that for a broadband citywide broadband project. That's of course, once they run out of money, then it's the burden's going to fall on local taxpayers, and that's the problem with all this federal money. They get you addicted to free money, and then it runs out, and the next hit costs more.
Yeah, and we have a screenshot here. We wanted to look into this program. Or we have the website here, but you can go to this is the National Low Income Housing Coalition, and they helped set up the Idaho Workforce Housing Fund, and so we put this into statute, and it's the description's right there. In 2022, the legislature created the Workforce Housing Fund to use the federal ARPA money from 21. Now look up here in the funding source. Look at that special one-time federal funding, $50 million. One time, that was it. But now we have this program, and now we're compelled to fund it. And then if you stop funding it, Brian, what happens? And you get blamed for saying, oh, we don't want to help, low-income families with their housing, and it's so hard, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, this is where they set us up for failure. They set you up for failure to just keep the spigot flowing with money. This is egregious. I'm glad Senator Groh mentioned it. I hope they do something about it. And this is the kind of fight and battles that they're going to expect. We expect to have in JFAC and even on the House and Senate floor. It looks like they came up with two terminologies. There's the maintenance bills and then the enhancement bills, right? What do you know about those two? Because I think we're going to be hearing a lot of those terms.
So this was the pilot program that Senator Groh and Representative Horman pioneered last year that got a lot of pushback. The former pro tem Chuck Winder and several others, former Representative Megan Blanksma, were apparently very much opposed to this process, in which they take all the operating expenses from last year and just roll them up in, last year they did 10 omnibus budget bills. Typically in Idaho, we don't like omnibus bills, but this was a way to get the stuff that everybody agreed. We'd already voted on it last year, already approved it last year. We're just going to do that this year, get them out early so that then JFAC can spend its time examining the new requests. Okay, what more money are they asking for? And then those they can have a little bit more time to scrutinize. And it also gives the floors, the Senate and the House floors, more freedom to send a bill back. Because they're not worried, on the last day of the session about forcing everybody to cancel their vacation because they have to argue over some minor line item in a massive budget. Instead, they have more time to actually go through and say, we're not going to fund this one. And that's what happened last year with the summer EBT program. The Biden administration was pushing a program that would give EBT cards to a lot of families, even more than just low-income families, more than just qualified for free.
Yeah, everybody.
School. And that came through and nobody was really paying attention. And then it got to the Senate floor and the senators voted against that, defeated it, sent it back to JFAC, and JFAC stripped the program. And of course, Democrats in the media said that we just hate children and want them to starve. But obviously that's not the case. As you saw with these programs, with these COVID funds, once you get a government program going and people become dependent on it, then they demand that it keep going and you keep funding it. Had something like summer EBT been used, people would have just come to expect government to pay for their lunches during the summertime with free money. And we don't want to build that kind of dependence in the people of Idaho. We want people to be self-reliant, not dependent on an ever-expanding government.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true. And look, when the governor stands up there and talks about wanting to sort of advance and help the Trump administration, which includes the Doge, right? Idaho was Doge before the federal government was, the Department of Government Efficiency. This is exactly the type of thing you cut. You say, done, done, or consolidate it with something else. But you don't, no, not even consolidate. What am I talking about? Get rid of it. Just get rid of it. It was created during COVID. And one of the reasons they probably don't want to get rid of it is how many employees, how many CTEs are we paying, and they're going to lose their job, right? Well, we're not here to protect government jobs. Go get a private sector job, right? I mean, cut this program. I mean, this is what we need to see.
The ironclad rule of government programs is eventually everyone, whatever its original mission, its mission becomes protecting itself and perpetuating itself and expanding itself. And that just happens with everything. It's the old saying that there's, the closest thing to eternal life on earth is a government program. So once it's there, it's very hard to get rid of. So, we need to get rid of a ton, but even easier is to nip them in the bud before people start coming in and growing them. Let's stop them from being made in the first place.
Right, exactly. All right, Brian. Well, thanks for stopping by again today. It's always we're going to have you on. I mean, I keep feeling like you're just going to be like coming in every once in a while. But man, the people love it. The people want you here, and I'm glad you're here.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the chance to come in and talk politics and keep people informed. An informed citizen is a better engaged citizen.
Yeah, and remind people where they can follow you.
Head over to gemstatechronicle.com. Yesterday, I wrote a long article about the school choice bills that are on the docket, and obviously Representative Hostetler's bill is going to change that conversation too. Also follow me on X at GemStateBrian.
Fantastic. All right, Brian, have a good day. Yep, there's the website. Very good. All right, folks, we're coming up at the bottom here. I just wanted to remind everybody that if you are a coffee drinker like I am, then you need to head over to lifecda.com And look, I scared the producers. They're like, he's doing it. Oh, I can't believe he's doing it. LifeCDA.com. Promo code Signal will get you 10% off an online order of coffee. My favorite there is in the light brown bag, Mineral Ridge. And that is a great blend of coffee. But you can get your own. Choose your own. Head over to lifecda.com. Use the promo code Signal and get 10% off your online order. And do so now. Another quick reminder, tomorrow we are going to have, I think we're going to have Representative Clint Hostetler on. He was supposed to be on yesterday, but he got tied up, and that's what happens, but we were able to reschedule. So he will drop by, and we'll definitely ask him about that school choice bill tax credit. Looks like very exciting. And until then, folks, IdahoSignal.com to support the show. And I think that's all I've got for today. We will check in and be back tomorrow. Take care.
This bill, I think, puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.